What we're going to talk about this evening is what type of racing is for you. So, as I talk about this, I'd like to, I'm going to tell you how I got started in racing, but I'd also like to hear how the people that can hear me either got started in racing or going out to the track or just driving fast and getting tickets. That's the way a lot of people start off in their trek to becoming either racers or autocrossers or time attackers or whatever it is. It starts off with, some kind of an impetus, an intensity, if you will, to go faster than the average bear. With me, I always like going fast. I mean, the joke, not truthful but funny story is that when I was a baby, I would crawl around the carpet really fast until I could generate a slide. And when I was crawling really fast, I would make engine noises and upshift sounds. Um, Not true, but a good story. Gotta admit. Um, but the truth is, I've always liked to go fast, whether I'm on a bicycle, whether I'm running, whatever it is, I like to see how fast I can go. And that's why I was enamored so much with racing eventually. But initially, getting a fair amount of tickets on the street because, and And if any parents are out there listening and you think that your teenage son or daughter that has super intensity and loves going fast and is talking about cars or motorcycles or trucks or whatever it is all the time, that they're going to grow out of that. If it's as bad as I had it, they're not gonna grow out of it. So then the decision comes down to being either they can do it in a positive way and do it on the track, or in a negative way, as I initially did it, and do it on the street. And if they do it on the street, inevitably they'll get ticketed. Maybe they'll have accidents. I mean, and driving has changed. When I was doing some of the silly stuff that I was doing in Indiana, it was um, it was a different time. We didn't have as many cars. We didn't have as much aggression, driver to driver. There was no such thing as road rage back then, at least not what we called it. So it was different. I had a great driving type childhood. Um, Mowed a lot of lawns to save up my money, and my first car was a Renault 10. Now, if you don't know what that is, Google it. It's a little square, boxy, four-door rear engine car by Renault, which back then I called Renault incorrectly. And the reason that I got it was A, I could afford it, and B, it had a stick shift, and C, it had reclining seats. And when I was in high school, reclining seats were important to me. And I'll just leave that where it is. Let's see, Maryland. To go safely, still have. Okay, cool. And race at Bandamere. Okay. Yep. I like Trans Am. Trans Am's one of my favorite cars um, that I desperately tried to get back in 1973 was a Trans Am 455 Super Duty Firebird with the Hearst shifter. And back then, they were only $4,000. I called up every relative I knew. I begged, I pleaded, and nobody was having any of it. And I couldn't raise the money. So I ended up getting a Chevy Vega, which were only $2,000, or actually a little bit less than that. And I proceeded to try to modify that Vega to go faster and faster, and blew up just about every part on that Vega, because back then Vegas had a thing called wheel hop. Old Camaros, as Liam will tell you, still have wheel hop. And wheel hop is where, at least in the Vegas case, when you got on it under acceleration, instead of just getting wheel spin, the tires would actually bounce on the ground, and that put a lot of stress on your differential, and you could blow spider gears in the diff, actually pretty easily, which I did on numerous occasions. Um, but I learned a very big lesson that I've already said on previous episodes. If you want a fast car, buy a fast car. Don't try to make a slow car into a fast car. Now, you can certainly make a slow car into a faster car, because most manufacturers will build in a little bit of extra reliability, that if you get a tune or an exhaust system or whatever it is, it'll go a little faster and still be reliable. But if you try to make a Chevy Vega into a Trans Am Firebird, that is not going to work too well for you. Ask me how I know. Um, I mean, I blew up just about every part on that Vega and replaced it with a faster part and blew it all up again. And those were good times, but I wish someone would have just told me, look, Mike, if you want a fast car, save your money and buy a fast car, or don't try to make your slower car into a really fast car. Just drive your slower car, put some wheels on it, cool, an exhaust system, fine. That's not going to mess with the reliability. But, if you try to put more horsepower in it, transmission's not set up for that. Drive shaft is not set up for that. Axles are not set up for that. Brakes are not set up for that. And if you put a V8 in it, a lot of people were putting V8s in Vegas back then. You have to totally redo the suspension. You have to put bigger brakes on it, or it's just not going to be the complete car. Now, if you're trying to do drag racing, and a lot of people have been to Bandimere, Maryland, and I've been there. And Zach, you've probably been to Bandimere's, I'm pretty sure. Drag racing, or you don't even have to race, going to Bandimere and finding out what your car does in the quarter mile, that's kind of a standard. I mean, a lot of people can do that. It doesn't cost a lot of money. All you need is a helmet and your stock, 100% stock car, and just roll down there. You can do cars, motorcycles, trucks, SUVs. I've seen a lot of motorhomes. I've seen a lot of stuff go down the quarter mile at Bandimere's or at the drag strip at Pueblo. And it's good to know that stuff. Like, what does your car do in the quarter mile is kind of like, 0 to 60. Well, what does your car do 0 to 60, man? And to know that's kind of like, I feel, a moral obligation. If you've got a car, you probably should know what the horsepower and torque is of your car. you know if you're an enthusiast. Now, you don't have to know that stuff, but if you're a motorhead and you're thinking about getting in some type of competition, you already know that stuff. You're already paying attention to the specs, of the vehicle because you're thinking about making the vehicle go faster and hopefully making you go faster. So let's talk drag racing for a moment in time. Two cars line up, pre-stage. That's when the first little light, the top light comes on. Then you inch forward until you're staged. Bottom light comes on, and then the Christmas tree goes down. Now, there's a pro tree that only has one light, and then there's a regular tree that has 4 or 5 lights. I always forget. And when you see the green, will be too late to go, of course. But before you see the green, you'll go, but you don't want a red light. So the actual principles of drag racing are very simplistic and very easy. And going down the quarter mile, accelerating a car in a straight line for a quarter mile at maximum acceleration, especially if you have a pretty slow car, is pretty easy. Anybody can do that pretty much. The hard part about drag racing that makes drag racing a heartbreaker is if you can't cut a good light, then you're not going to be doing very well um, in drag racing. You can travel all across the country and your first round, if you don't cut a good light, then you go home, and that's the way drag racing is. Or if you go too soon and you red light, then you go home as well. So drag racing can be a real heartbreaker, but it's easy. It's not particularly expensive because you can use the car that you have, at least getting into it. If you're going to be doing top fuel, it's going to be real expensive. And stuff's going to blow up because you're going to be making a lot more horsepower. I always like drag racing just because the challenge of cutting a good light and getting to drive a car that's pretty fast or a motorcycle. Forever ago in '79, I got Colorado drag bike champion out at Vandermeer one time, so that was kind of cool. Um, and for me, motorcycles were the way to do it. Motorcycles were way faster than cars, stock for stock, and they were reliable. So what's not to like? Less money, faster, and as or more reliable than cars. Cool, because I was road racing motorcycles pretty much anyway, or about to. The downside of drag racing, to me anyway, is the waiting. Like you do your 10-second run, or in my case, MX Chevrolet is one of my sponsors, and they have 3 Camaros that are probably 1,000 horsepower Camaros that are drag cars, and they'll turn a 9.0 at 150 miles an hour, which is, that's pretty fast. You actually have to have an NHRA license um, to go that fast. Anything under 10 seconds, you have to have a license to do that. So it's pretty cool, and you got to wear a fire suit and the full meal deal there, and that's good. The problem with drag racing is, at least for me, is the waiting. You'll do your 10-second run, you'll cruise back, you'll get your time slip, you'll cruise back to the pits, and then typically your next round, if it's a competition, won't be for an hour. On really really big grids, even longer than that at first. And again, I just kind of got tired of the waiting. It was fun. It's still really cool. Doing the burnout is one of my favorite parts. especially with the Camaro because it's got a line lock. So you push the little red button, you put it in second gear, and you get the tires spinning, and then you go to third gear and just light it up a little bit, and then release the line lock and move it forward as the tires are spinning. That's pretty cool, especially when you've got a 1,000 horsepower Camaro. It's really cool. Now, when we were doing it with motorcycles, it was very easy because you just squeeze the front brake, get the rear tire going, and lean forward and give it some gas, and it would just light up the tire. Now, when I was doing drag racing on motorcycles, I wanted to put a little road racer flavor in it, so I would do a static burnout and then light up the tire. And then when I would brake, I would do a brakie, which is lifting up the rear tire off the ground and using a lot of front brake. And people would be, intrigued with that because most of the motorcycle guys don't do that. So it was a lot of fun. Um, and doing it on a motorcycle is pretty cool because launching, if you've got any power at all, the front end's going to come up off the ground, and you've got to move your weight forward and tuck in, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So anyway, so drag racing is easy to get involved with. Not super expensive, especially if you have a slower car. I mean, if you've got a car with under 200 horsepower, you don't really even need to do a burnout. you, you're not going to be spinning for very long, if at all. Um, and you get to compete. I mean, it's wheel to wheel racing. You're not just going out there for time. You're actually competing against someone else, and that's kind of fun. Um, racing against the clock is okay, but I've always been a proponent of wheel to wheel racing is real racing compared to racing against the clock. Now, again, not minimizing racing against the clock, that can be every bit as difficult. But well, let's go to autocross for a moment. Autocross, gymkhanas, solo, any of those is always against the clock. Pro solo, it's you've got mirror courses and you start two cars, and it's kind of against somebody else, but it's still really against the clock. And autocross, which I did for a while, one of my first competitions ever was in autocross. And boy, I just thought it was great because, again, it doesn't cost a lot of money. All you really need is a helmet. And back then, it was like 20 bucks, and you got 3 timed runs on a big parking lot with about 1 million cones in it. And if you've never done anything as a competition, it was great fun. I just thought it was cool that you could get on a track or a parking lot and go as fast as the car would go and not get a ticket. What a concept. So, I did that and it was fun. But again, the waiting, you'll do your run and your run is probably a minute or so, and then you come back and you wait, or sometimes they'll let you go right back because your tires are typically stone cold when you're doing an autocross or a solo. um, what I used to do is go out to the street or another part of the parking lot and just get the tires warmed up so that when I did my first run, my tires wouldn't be stone cold. And then you just see in your class if you have the fastest time out of the 3 runs. So you don't necessarily have to be consistent, but you do have to get one good run in to win your class. and that's kind of cool. Again, when I was doing autocross and solo and all of that stuff, I mean, I thought it was really fun because I had not yet gotten involved in road racing, either car or motorcycle. Um, so it was, again, if you're looking to get into some type of motorsport and you don't have a lot of money, but you still want to experience some fun, autocross, solo, gymkhana, time attack, all of those are very good venues. Drag racing, all of those can be very good venues for you. You still get to get the experience of speed, although in autocross, you're probably not going to get up to over 100 miles an hour, hardly ever. Most of the autocross courses are pretty tight. Some of them I've been a little bit over 100, but just for a moment. Whereas if you're on a road course, um, all of them you're going to be getting over 100, pretty much, unless it's like a go-kart track or something like that. So consider those things. Now, the other side of the coin is if you're somebody that thinks the speed limits are too high and people are always passing you, and you're like, well, what's the hurry? Where are all these people going? Racing is probably not for you, my friend. You are a point A to point B. Vehicles are just conveyances of transportation, and that's their only purpose. And you're probably not going to have any more fun doing any of the stuff that I just suggested. So, the way you can tell is if you're the one that always wants to pass people. If you're at a stoplight and there's a merge lane and it goes obviously from 2 lanes to 1 lane, and you want to be the person that is up front, that would be a clue that you might enjoy taking it to the next level. But if you're in the right lane and you're in your Prius and you're like, you go right ahead, I'm not in a hurry, I'm just trying to get to my job or get home. And that's why I got this Prius and it barely gets up to speed limit, which is not true. Priuses will go more than speed limit. But yeah, then, the talk we're having this evening probably doesn't apply to you. You're probably someone that gets pleasure from other means besides operating a motorized vehicle, and that includes electric cars because they have motors. Um, I would always recommend trying. Real road racing. I tell just about everybody that asks me this question, get your full competition SCCA road racing license and do a season if you can. Um, then you'll know what real road racing is about. Now, the reason I recommend SCCA first is because I think they've got the best program. Now, doesn't mean that NASA doesn't run a good program. They do. Doesn't mean that Vintage doesn't run a good program, or Porsche Club or BMW Club. They do. But through my experience, and I've raced Vintage, I've raced NASA, I've raced SCCA, I've done some pro racing. The difference is that SCCA will typically have the best competition and greater depth in a particular class. Now, doesn't mean that NASA doesn't have some very good drivers, because they do, and likewise with Vintage, they do. But if you go to the SCCA runoffs, it's a national event, invitation only, and the best of the best typically are there. A lot of pro racers will come and do the runoffs, and it's very, very, very difficult to win. And once you experience that, then either you'll love it and you'll keep doing it, or you'll say at the end of the season, man, that was way too much competition, and I need to, I need to take it down a little bit. Or in the case with vintage racing, active, really intense racing is kind of against the philosophy. If there's any contact in vintage, um, you could be suspended for 12 or 13 months. Sometimes if it wasn't even your fault. So I get the intent of the philosophy, but as far as developing a top level road racer that can win, it's not going to be your best environment for that, because you really need to be able to do real top level racing. And sometimes that will involve a little bit of light contact, not taking people out or anything like that. But if you're if you're in Spec Miata or Spec Racer Ford, yeah, there's going to be a little rubbing is racing, and that's just normal. The fields are going to be pretty big, and lots of people want to win that class. So it'll be good racing. It might be a little more on your budget for getting a couple of dings fixed, or something like that, but it's really good racing. And if you've never experienced intense racing by people that are really good and have control of their car, so you can race really, really hard and actually touch mirrors or lightly rub, but no one loses control of their car, and you do that for 35 minutes. If you've never experienced that, it's really, really fun. I would say more fun than other forms of road racing. And on the motorcycles, when your knees to the ground, nowadays your elbows to the ground, I don't do that. And again, you're rubbing up against people or actually touching people. Your knee will be up against somebody else's something or whatever. Um, that's some pretty intense stuff. And with motorcycle road racing, again, it's a lot less expensive than car racing typically, just because the bikes are reliable. Tires, obviously, you're only buying two, and those two can be less than the price of one big, like, Corvette tire. So I got started in motorcycle road racing first, right after the motorcycle drag racing, because I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a lot of intensity and I had a lot of drive, and I really loved getting started in MRA road racing, and became an AMA pro and all that stuff. Um, and I think motorcycles are more fun, but you've got to move around on them. You're, especially if you've got an open class bike, which I raced for most of my motorcycle road racing career. I was racing 1100s or thousands, or something that had a lot of power. I raced an RZ 350. I had an RG 500 Gamma. I had some pretty fun stuff. Eddie Lawson replica, which was 1,000 Kawasaki, the green bike. That was one of my favorites. And then my era of racing Ducatis. Who would have thought? Because I was a confirmed Japanese sport bike motorcycle road racer and didn't understand why anybody would want to race something that back then sounded like a farm tractor and was really expensive and not particularly reliable. Well, it all started with me when a buddy of mine let me ride his Ducati out at Second Creek Raceway, and I went faster on that than I did my GSXR Suzuki 1000, and I couldn't believe it. So anyway, I really liked it. So I started racing Ducatis and really loved it for, I don't know, 10 years. And only recently did I become a BMW guy. Got a 1000 RRM option one now, which goes pretty fast and is fun to ride. Um, but the Ducatis ended up being reliable and fun, and I had a ball. Was MRA, almost won the championship, I think, a couple of times. I got second in the state a couple of times. Um, and that's really fun. I mean, as long as you don't fall down, motorcycle road racing will be less expensive typically than car racing, unless you have a really slow car. Um, but a lot of people are scared of it because if you fall down, you could get hurt, and that's true. I was very fortunate when I was racing motorcycles a lot. I never got seriously injured, never broke a bone. Um, yeah, and it was big fun. So, consider that in your options. What type of racing is for you? Car, motorcycle. I also raced ATVs for a while, ice racing down at Rainbow Falls, which was a lot of fun and a lot of cold. I met my wife Bernie in that era, and she went to, I think, one or two of those races and said, it's really cold out here. So, but again, very inexpensive. I mean, if you race an ATV on the ice, and I was racing the bare tire class, I mean, you're hardly ever going to wear out a tire, and it's all slide and it was fun, and it was not very expensive. Throw an ATV in the back of your pickup truck and get your helmet and your gear, and I don't know, entry fee was, I don't know, $20 if that, and off you go, and you got to do multiple races, and it was usually on an oval type track, but they had them in different locations, and that's an element that you may want to consider too. Then there's all kinds of dirt bike racing. There's motocross, there's flat track, there's TT, there's enduro, there's cross country. All of those, and I did all of those in my dirt era with motorcycles. And all of that stuff is really fun. I had a ball. I would, like I said last time, I would jump out of bed when it was snowing and before the plows got out there, hop on the motorcycle and slip slide around, and man, that was just big fun. Now I've gotten a little more soft. I've given up the dirt and all of that, so I'm a street bike guy now, and almost a fair weather rider. But those were good times. So consider that. Um, some of my buddies still, even though they're my age, they still love to do dirt bike riding over street bike riding. So consider that. Um, with road racing, I'll come back to car road racing just because that's what I've kind of settled on, and it's a lot of fun. I typically do the Mid States Conference SCCA circuit and go to the runoffs. That's usually what I try to win every year, and then we usually do a super tour or two, which is a different points setup. So if you want to get that license, you can go directly to your SCCA full competition license if you do 5 days through my school. And then I just send in paperwork, and you have to get a physical. You have to join SCCA, and they have some other paperwork for you to fill out, and then you're good to go. And then you need a race car. A race car is going to be defined as something with a roll cage in it. That's another big difference between doing solo or gymkhana or time attack. You don't have to have a roll cage, or even a fire suit. You do have to have a helmet, of course, to do those events. Whereas when you do wheel to wheel road racing, whether it's SCCA or NASA or vintage, you have to have a full roll cage. You have to have an SA approved helmet, either 3/4 or full face, Hans device, fire suit, fireproof socks, fireproof shoes, fireproof suit, balaclava if you have facial hair, um, and gloves. And your car has to not only have a roll cage, it has to have a racing seat, has to have a window net, unless it's a convertible, then you have to have arm restraints. It has to have a fire extinguisher or a fire system, depending on the class, and a logbook. Logbook is just a thing that says that the car has been inspected. It also gives you a history of how many races the car has run. So any car, whether it's an SCCA car or a NASA car or a vintage car, I believe has to have a logbook. I know in SCCA and NASA you do, and I'm pretty sure on vintage you do as well. So, so any other stories, Marilyn? You like to go fast safely. Hopefully, we all like to go fast safely. I like to go fast safely. I like to go very fast safely. Any other stories, or how you got into whatever type of competition you did, or the other alternative too is you can just go out and do lapping days. A lot of people are doing that. You don't have to have a license. Again, you don't have to have a roll cage. Basically, just a helmet and a car in good condition. And it doesn't have to be really expensive, but if you do it badly and you've got a really fast car, you're going to burn through some stuff pretty fast and get passed by slower cars while you're out there. So that's when you may want to get training so that you don't get passed by a Miata when you have a turbo Porsche. To me, that would be humiliating enough to either sell the Porsche or get training right away. Um, but I've had, I mean, it's one of the most fun things that I do, and I've done a lot of fun things in my life. Um, I've been racing, I've been road racing for a very long time, whether it's motorcycle road racing or car road racing. For a while, I did both, and then I've in the last oh, 15 years, I guess, I've really concentrated on the cars and just doing the motorcycles like one or two times a year. Um, it's just a lot to do, and if you're me, um, you're probably not going to be able to win everything, because you really have to have good crew, and you have to if you're gonna go for the win, you've got to spend the money to have the top, whether it's tires or equipment or proper vehicle, that you can win in whatever class you're in. Otherwise, I mean, and again, you don't have to race to win. You can race to just be out there, or you can race to just be somewhat competitive. I did a seminar for one of the SCCA conferences on, how to win championships. And everybody doesn't have to win championships. I mean, there's a buddy of mine that the main thing to him is that he race a Porsche. Now, he can finish last, he can finish mid pack, he doesn't really care as long as he's racing a Porsche. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not geared that way. I like to win regardless of the car. Um, if I can win in a car that costs less money, that would be a benefit to me. Although I do like to race kind of fast cars, which is why last year, um, well, I ran 4 different classes. In T1, I ran a Corvette, a C6 Corvette. In T2, I ran a Turbo Solstice. In T3, I ran a restricted, weighted down Turbo Solstice. Truly sad. And in T4, I ran a normally aspirated Solstice. So, and running 4 classes, I wouldn't recommend that. It's actually kind of silly. But I was trying to see if I could win 4 out of 4 because no one's ever done that. And guess what? No one's still ever done that. Um, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's the competition's really good. The speed, some of the tracks are just awesome. I mean, if you've never raced Road America, I would put that on your list. If you've never raced Indy, I would put that on your list. We're going to be there for the runoffs this year. If you've never raced Sonoma, Laguna Seca, I mean, there's so many tracks that even if you do badly on them, they're worth going to race. Um, and then if you can happen to win at one of them or set a lap record and win, then it's even sweeter. Um, I've done a lot of fun stuff. There were a few years that I was disenfranchised with SCCA road racing for a variety of reasons, and I tried to find something that would be more fun than SCCA road racing. So I hang glided, I flew ultralights, I flew fixed wing aircraft, I flew helicopters, um, and all of that was really fun, but it wasn't as fun as the competition wheel to wheel of road racing cars or motorcycles. I was part of a dance troupe for a while. I've had radio shows. I've done TV. I was a professional trampolinist off and on for about 12 years. All of that stuff is really, motivational speaker. All of that stuff is really fun, but there's something about going, taking a vehicle to its limits. And not only that, but having to be consistent and have good racecraft to get around other people so that you can win. That's pretty tasty stuff. Um, if anybody knows anything more fun than that, I'm all ears. Put it in the comments section. For me, I've tried most of it, and I'll be road racing. It looks like for a while longer. Um, so anyway, what type of racing is for you? Well, it depends. You may like dirt, you may like pavement. Another thing we didn't really go over are hill climbs. Hill climbs are really cool. Um, they're racing against the clock. Um, the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, the Central City Hill Climb. I've done those two. Central City Hill Climb. If any of you got a chance to experience any of those 3 years, that was certainly a highlight in my life just because the speeds were so high. And it was on the road from Idaho Springs to Central City, where it says, "Welcome to Central City." Um, that was a really great. That was a really great. Okay, Shannon, what's happening, buddy? Sorry, I didn't. Everybody was putting comments in. Did I scroll down? No. Anyway, I'm gonna catch up. Yeah, you weren't late, buddy. It's all right. Oh yeah, World Rally Championship. Yeah, that's cool stuff. Flat track is inexpensive. Yes. And Zach, yes, SCCA does have open wheel classes, and they can be affordable. Formula V is very affordable. Formula 500 or F500 is pretty affordable. Um, even Club Ford is fairly affordable. Formula Atlantic, not as much. So it just depends. But yeah, I don't think NASA has any open wheel classes as we sit here. But SCCA has, oh boy, probably 6 open wheel classes from Formula V all the way up to Formula Atlantic, Pro Formula Mazda F1000. I mean, there's a bunch of them in there. And I did open wheel racing for a while, um, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a Winkelmann WDF1 open wheel car. Thanks, Lars Hansen. I was racing closed wheel for a while, and my buddy Lars says, "Well, if you if you think if you call yourself a road racer and you haven't raced open wheel, you're not a real road racer." So okay, so we had to go out and buy an open wheel car. And Liam, okay, NASA has a new prototype class, okay, but I think that's still closed wheel, is it not, or is that open wheel? Uh, okay, fairly cheap for what it is. Yeah, one of my students had one of those, and it was really cool, pretty fast, and I guess pretty reliable. Um, and Sonoma, yeah, Sonoma is crazy fun. If you haven't been to the Sonoma racetrack, you should go because it's a hoot. And Luciano, wish you could be here. Okay, you're busy. I get it. And you'll be able to see this later on anyway. Um, so anyway, we've been talking about this for a while again. It still amazes me how I can just talk about this, and an hour goes by and we've had fun and we've talked about a lot of different types of racing. Um, Another thing that we haven't talked about is the Colorado Mile. When they did the Colorado Mile here, that was one of the things that was really cool. And if you've never done a street racing is really cool. And I don't mean play racing, I mean like the Denver Grand Prix, which I got a chance to do. Um, Central City Hill Climb is more of a hill climb. But like Steamboat went on for like 13 years, and that was a really cool street based road racing event. That was really cool. I got to do it with cars and motorcycles, and the motorcycles were the coolest because there were big elevation changes. If you've never been to Steamboat, and I forget the exact corner, but you'd go down the hill and then you'd compress and your shoulder would brush the hay bale, and then you would go up the hill, and it was, oh my gosh, it was really fun. Now, it was a little more dangerous than the average racetrack that we went to, but it was just a great. I was really sorry to see that race go, both with MRA and Vintage. Yeah, Shannon, I'm sure you were there, buddy. It was a cool deal. So anyway, try it. Come on out to a track. If you want to get better at car, motorcycle, truck, bus, RV driving, give me a call. 303-666-4113. Go to the website, Go4IT. I'm trying to get the Go4IT in there. Go4ITservices.com. I'm on YouTube with Go4IT space TV and Instagram. So thanks everybody for showing up and giving me some comments. If you had half as much fun as I did, you had a ball. A moment of silence, I guess, for the families that were negatively affected in the King Soopers shooting yesterday. It seems that's come to Boulder, Colorado. Not that it's new to Colorado. It's not. Not that it's not new to the world. It's not. But it's always a sadness. So anyway, drive safely out there. If you have anything else that you want me to talk about, leave me a message or call me, and we'll meet up again next week, Tuesday night at 7 p.m. So thanks a lot. See you guys. Have a good evening.